This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week, you've chosen not to debate the Democratic Party. Why?
You know, every candidate has to choose what strategy they're going to use going forward.
The incumbent Republican governor is asking voters for another 4 years. You will hear from Bill Lee.
Mistakes on our part that we feel like we have corrected.
A ballot mix-up. 200 voters cast ballots in the wrong race. The question is, who's to blame?
When students of all races and backgrounds come to college,
The U.S. Supreme Court hears arguments that could end race being a factor in who colleges admit. More in a This Week cover story.
There's nowhere to go around here.
And maternity deserts. A third of Tennessee has no maternity care for women. Hello again and welcome to another edition of This Week. Voters will be choosing a governor, congressional representatives next week, but they will also be deciding 4 amendments to the state constitution. More in our This Week cover story. You will also hear Republican Governor Bill Lee's views on the issues as he seeks a second term as governor. But first, I'll look at the other political headlines of the week.
190 impacted congressional races, 16 impacted state Senate races, and 6 impacted state House races.
More than 200 people in Davidson County cast ballots in the wrong congressional district. Instead of being given ballots for District 7, they were given ballots for District 6. Democratic leaders blame the ballot mix-up on redistricting. Republicans say Democrats can't get voters to the polls and are looking for scapegoats. We spoke with the Davidson County Administrator of Elections, and he says the buck stops with his office.
Mistakes on our part that we feel like we have corrected.
212 incorrect votes. Not a huge number, but it begs the question, how did this happen?
We, here in Davidson County, we provide information to the Secretary of State's office, and there was a discrepancy between the two, and that's what started the ball rolling and caused the need to do a lot of research.
The issue came to light after an AP reporter found a discrepancy between her real ballot and the one she was expecting.
When she started to investigate who was going to be on her ballot, that started sending up red flags because she got 2 different answers.
Though the impact is low, it's still important to note the error happening because of the current political climate.
There are enough conspiracy theorists out there that just this feeds. Even though we know there's absolutely, I'm 100% sure that this is pure error. But that notwithstanding, a lot of folks' trust level is such that they're just not going to buy it.
Polling places may be more crowded than usual this year due to an increase in poll watchers. Nationally, there have been reports of voter intimidation by poll watchers, but so far not in Tennessee. News 2's Adam Mincer has more.
This election day, there may be more volunteers watching you and watching out for you than you've seen in the past.
Interest in poll watching has grown since the 2020 election.
While they don't track the data, the Davidson County Election Commissioner says anecdotally they're seeing an uptick in people interested in becoming a poll watcher.
They can be inside the precinct. They can't interfere with voting at all. They can only communicate with the officer of elections, so they can't talk to voters and they can't talk to the poll workers.
Poll watchers are usually affiliated with a political party, candidate, or group, but they can't advocate for any issue or person within 100 feet of the polling location.
Outside the 100-foot boundary, lots of things can go on. It could be a party-type atmosphere.
This year in Davidson County, more than 230 of the 250-plus registered poll watchers as of Monday are affiliated with the county Republican Party.
That was flipped back in 2014, or 2018 rather, when the Democratic Party had significantly more poll watchers.
But for some people, poll watching has nothing to do with party loyalty.
My motivation for poll watching is actually voter advocacy to make sure the laws are being applied evenly to everyone.
Marianne Ott says she tries to make sure poll workers are following proper ID and disability access rules. But lately, she's had another reason to keep coming back.
There's been so much questioning of whether our elections are fair and conducted appropriately. I'd just like to have the experience to be able to say, well, I have watched it quite a number of polls and I have seen.
Now to our This Week cover story. Affirmative action at colleges appears to be in trouble. The U.S. Supreme Court heard cases against 2 schools accused of discriminating against white and Asian Americans. The justice's decision could impact colleges across the country. Here's Evan Lambert.
In 2 cases argued before the Supreme Court today over the admissions process at the University of North Carolina and Harvard, the justices will decide if the use of race, among other factors, in evaluating applicants is constitutional or discriminatory. That's what a group called Students for Fair Admissions argues. The arguments put the political divide of the 9 members of the court on full display with its 6-3 conservative majority. Liberal-leaning justices like Ketanji Brown Jackson asking questions that seem to support UNC's argument.
Do you get a point automatically for having checked that box?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And the court's conservative-leaning majority pressing lawyers representing both UNC and Harvard hard.
I've heard the word diversity quite a few times, and I don't have a clue what it means. Seems to mean everything for everyone.
The Biden administration also argued in support of both schools.
When students of all races and backgrounds come to college and live together and learn together, they become better colleagues, better citizens, and better leaders.
While a lawyer for the plaintiff in both cases, Students for Fair Admissions, Cameron Norris asked the court to reconsider decades of precedent.
This court should admit that it was wrong about Harvard, wrong about Grutter, and wrong about letting the poison of racial classifications seep back into education.
Beginning in 1978, the Supreme Court ruled in Regents of the University of California versus Bakke that affirmative action in higher education was constitutional. In 2003, in Grutter versus Bollinger, the court ruled that using race as one factor in admissions was legal. And most recently, in 2016, in Fisher v. University of Texas, the court upheld affirmative action again. If the justices agree and say the universities may not consider race, it could impact 40% of all U.S. universities, and the schools argue could lead to a significant drop in the number of students from underrepresented minority groups like Black and Hispanic students. Giving one example, that according to Harvard, the percentage of Black students would drop from 14 to 6%.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back. We caught up with Governor Bill Lee at a Buc-ee's in Crossville as he seeks to become the 6th governor in a row to be elected to 2 terms in Tennessee. The last 5 governors in this state, Lamar Alexander, Ned McWhorter, Don Sundquist, Phil Bredesen, and Bill Haslam, they all won a 2nd term. Democrats, different politics. What is it about these people, those people, that the voters of Tennessee said, yes, these are our leaders, because that's the trend you want to continue? So different people, different politics. What was it about those 5 men?
You know, those are all men that had a heart to serve, and they had a desire to take their lives and use it to better the lives of Tennesseans. We know that about those men. They were each public servants in the greatest sense of the word, and I think people saw that about them.
You want to continue that trend. You want to be the 6th governor to have in a row to have 2 terms. Are voters looking at you differently, Bill Lee, today than they did 4 years ago when you were that unknown quantity, and then now you have a record and 4 years behind you?
You know, I hope they see me in some ways differently, in some ways the same. I still am doing this because I care deeply about this state. I care deeply about the people of this state. I really do want to use my life to impact people's lives for good. I think leaders have an opportunity to do that. I do know more about it than I did 4 years ago, for sure. And we've done some things that I think were very impactful in a positive way for our state.
Tennessee is no doubt is having a booming economy. Unemployment is low. You got new businesses, some huge gets. Blue Oval City, a new battery plant for the General Motors plant, General Motors facility in Spring Hill. And yet it's not being shared statewide. Right. We've talked about this before. There are still pockets of poverty. There are unserved counties. I know you're working to do that. How do you increase that strength so that this is shared more in those rural areas that are not seeing it yet?
You know, we do have the fastest growing economy of any state in the country right now, and that's a very good thing for all of Tennessee. But when I came into office, You know, I grew up in a rural community. When I came into office, the first executive order that I signed required every department in the state of Tennessee to create a strategic plan to tell me how they were going to operate in a way that impacted our most rural and most struggling counties, our distressed counties. So from the very beginning, it's been important to me that the prosperity of Tennessee extend to all the rural counties. We had 15 economically distressed counties when I came into office. We have 10 now. I hope to move that towards 0 in the next 4 years.
The Tennessee Commission on Children, and this is disturbing, says 1 in 4 Tennessee children lives in poverty. With the boom, with the economic growth we're seeing here, how do you address this? How do you fix this? How does this even happen at this state in the state?
I think that's exactly what economic activity does, is it creates opportunity. I was in Lake County, which is one of the most impoverished counties in our state. We were doing a ribbon cutting for a new company that was opening there that was creating a couple hundred jobs, high-paying jobs, in a very sparsely populated county that has a very low, a very high a very low population, a very high poverty rate. That economic announcement will create opportunity for a couple hundred families, and in a county like that's a big deal. Those are the kinds of things that are starting to happen in our rural communities, and when that opportunity makes its way to those most distressed areas, then we can fight that poverty. But we have to be very intentional about it.
President Biden recently pardoned federal marijuana possession offenders and asked governors to do the same. Your administration told me that Tennessee's not going to do that. You have talked about criminal justice reform. Would it not be part of criminal justice reform to look at least if some people are serving extended sentences for small amounts of crime, should this not at least be looked at?
So we have a process in this state for clemency, and I've granted clemency, and we'll continue to grant clemencies moving along forward. People can follow that process regardless of what their background and what the crime that they have committed is. That's what I've said. If folks want clemency, they should go through the parole board process.
After the Dobbs decision, after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, Tennessee's trigger law went into effect. It's a fetal heartbeat bill, and abortions are outlawed in Tennessee after a fetal heartbeat is detected 5-6 weeks in that area roughly. No exceptions for rape, incest, or the life of a mother. There are groups out there, women's groups, doctors, who are urging you and the legislature to reconsider this and at least put in some exceptions. Any thoughts on that? Are you satisfied with the law as it is?
Well, you know, I do believe that we have a real obligation to protect the lives of the most vulnerable in our community, and that is the lives of the unborn. We have created a law that protects the lives of those unborn children. It also protects the life of a mother in the instance of a serious maternal health condition. What I believe we should do is protect that mother, protect the life of that child, and our law does that. I am satisfied with that. I think that's what we should be doing in our state, and I think that's where we'll be going forward.
So you don't think there should be any changes to the current law?
I'm satisfied with the law where it is.
You did not want to expand Medicaid. The legislature also did not want to expand Medicaid in this state. If you'd have done so since 2013, roughly $22 billion out there, why not use that money to use it for health care coverage? And when the money runs out, you stop the probe. Why not at least take the money and help some Tennesseans who need that health care coverage?
Yeah, I think that we need to keep as a big picture the fact that Tennesseans have access to high quality health care. We actually have, as you know, created what we believe is really an innovative and a new model for health care, particularly with Medicaid. We have the only shared savings Medicaid waiver of all states in the country. The Trump administration approved it. The Biden administration is finalizing that for us. And the reason that they are moving forward with that is because it is a model. It is a model to expand services. We've expanded our Medicaid services to the disabled community. We expanded more people more people qualify for Medicaid of those with disabilities. We have expanded dental service to 600,000 Tennesseans on Medicaid. We have expanded postpartum care for mothers on Medicaid. So we are using this innovative model to in fact expand services for Medicaid population and in some cases add people to those roles, I think that's the way going forward. I think it's a model for the country. And I think that's why both administrations have allowed and approved and are working with us.
There's a nationwide and Tennessee-wide teacher shortage in this country. Teachers feeling like they're being piled on, they're not getting enough money, they're having to do more than just teach, and a lot of people are leaving the profession. Obviously, education is huge in this state and in every state. Education is the key to moving forward. How do you attract these best teachers? How do you keep these best teachers and let them teach and not do 9 other things?
Yeah. Teachers are the key to the most important part of our future, and that's education, and particularly our public education system, which is where the vast majority of our kids are educated. I'm really pleased with the fact that we have created something called Grow Your Own. It is a teacher recruitment, workforce development strategy that incentivizes young people to enter the teaching profession. It is the only federally approved apprenticeship program for teachers in America. It is a Grow Your Own program that's going to allow us to get more teachers from the best and brightest kids in our state entering that education profession, and it'll allow us to have teachers in the future. It is an incredibly important job. It's a calling, but we got to get more kids in it, and we think we're going to get there.
You probably know this. I did not. We did a story just last night. There's a maternity care desert in Tennessee, and about a third of the state in some of these rural counties where there simply isn't maternity care because a lot of rural hospitals have shut down. Yeah. Are you addressing this? How do these women who are having babies in Lake County and have to go all the way to Memphis, how can they adapt? How can they make it easier?
Yeah, it's one of the things that we're actually looking at right now is how it is that we provide more services for women and especially for pregnant women, this postpartum care that we've provided, but looking at where there is a lack of maternal care and beginning to provide that in those rural communities through our healthcare safety net. It is clearly a problem that we have in our state, and we are working to address it.
Finally, sir, as you prepare if you win re-election, have you started setting up priorities? What would be your 1, 2, 3 priority for a second term? Would it be different from what you set as a goal for the first term?
You know, I think we'll continue in some of the things that have been really important, education and the increased opportunity in our education system. But I think one of the things that we have to look at is our state's one of the fastest growing states in the country. We have people moving here from every state. We have companies from around the globe that are deciding to invest here. We are the envy of many states because of what's happening here economically, which means jobs for people and opportunity for Tennesseans. But we have to be prepared for that. And 2 things. One, the state with the workers will win in the future. Workforce development is incredibly important. I've put a tremendous focus on vocational and technical and agricultural education. I have a background in skilled trades, and I know how desperately we need people who have gifts to attach their brain to their hands. We need an education system that provides pathways for those and therefore creates workers. So workforce development, and the other is infrastructure. We've already made significant investments in roads and bridges and highways.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back. A new report finds more than a third of Tennessee has become a maternity desert. That means mothers have no access to maternity care in the county where they live. And as News 2's Adam Mincer reports, the problem is getting worse.
For new mom Ashley World, getting a doctor to check something small was a big burden.
It was stressful.
World lives in Lauderdale County and works as a nurse. She says there are no obstetricians in the county.
There's nowhere to go around here.
And the closest one is more than an hour away in Memphis.
My husband always wanted to go to the appointments with me. I didn't want to go alone. And, you know, sometimes he couldn't always be off work like that. I would have to get someone else to go with me if I, didn't want to drive back and forth by myself.
When she was getting closer to her due date, the appointments and her concerns started to add up.
I didn't know what to expect on anything. I didn't know, what to expect with the delivery process. You know, what if I went to labor and couldn't get there? Like, that was always a big thing for me too.
Worlds ended up having her pregnancy induced after a regular appointment.
So I had to drive down there. I went to my appointment and I just asked a friend who lives in Memphis, like, hey, can I hang out for the day because I have to go back to the hospital tonight to be induced.
According to March of Dimes, Lauderdale County and a third of Tennessee counties are considered maternity care deserts.
Maternity care desert is where there's no access to an OB provider, a birthing center. There's just nothing there.
And she says since giving birth, she's gone to Memphis and back 10 to 20 times.
You know, I had to have a C-section. If I was very sore, I had, having to get in the car, drive an hour. And on top of it, they're eating every 2 to 3 hours. So right. It was very difficult.
But she says just because she's able to make the drives and appointments work doesn't mean she should have to get good care.
The March of Dimes says 6 counties have become maternity care deserts in the past year due to rural hospital closures. Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Thank you for spending part of your weekend with us. That will do it for another edition of This Week. I do want to thank my guest, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee. Hope to see you back here next weekend for another edition of This Week. Between now and then, you have a great week.